Okay, I think we will go ahead and get started. Um, Alex, can you just give me a thumbs up? Make sure you can hear me. I think we're good and that we see the background slides. Great, seeing thumbs up there. Excellent. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us again. We will probably still have some people trickling in here as we go, but the better, in my opinion. So my name is Nick Euler. I am the city's bikeway and pedestrian program manager in our division of engineering. So basically my office's responsibility is to make Memphis a better place for biking and walking. We are here this evening to talk about a project that I know there has been extensive interest in from the community and a desire to see improvements that we're going to be talking about tonight. So we are very eager to share these improvements with you. You will see that we reached this point after a very collaborative process, interacting with various stakeholders, both um, governmental entities, but also just organizations that represent users, people on bikes, people jogging, people walking, people trying to access Shelby Farms or the Wolf River Greenway. And all of that feedback, I believe, has led to proposals that are going to be a significant improvement at this location. So we're scheduled for a 1 hour meeting. We're scheduled to end tonight at 7 o'clock. We're going to start with a presentation. Should last only about 20 minutes or so. And after that, we will open it up to Q&A. So you should see the slides on your screen here. Let me just move forward. So here's our agenda for this evening. Just doing some welcome and introductions here. So on that note, let me be sure to acknowledge I am joined tonight by my colleague with the city, Alex Ullman, who is on here. He will be helping me moderate the Q&A once we get there. Um, and yes, and then we're going to talk about some quick housekeeping notes, go into the background of the project, how we got to where we are today. Then we will talk about the goals and constraints that we had with this project, existing conditions, and then the most interesting item, the actual planned improvements, the proposals that we have. Uh, Review some frequently asked questions that we've been getting a lot in regards to this location and the project, and then open it up to Q&A and discussion with you. So let's get started. So first, just some quick housekeeping notes. Number one, I do want you to be aware that this meeting is being recorded. This is being recorded right now, and we will be posting this publicly online afterwards. We have a YouTube account for Bike Ped Memphis. So if for some reason you have to drop off early tonight, you can go on there and check it out. Or if there's somebody who maybe you knew somebody was interested, they wanted to be here but couldn't make it, they will be able to watch this after the fact online. So we would highly encourage you to share that meeting on YouTube with anyone who may be interested after the fact. And side note, any virtual meeting that we undertake through our office, we also share a recording on there. So if listening to public meetings about bike facilities is your jam, then you might be able to find some other videos on there that you'd be interested in watching as well. Throughout the presentation tonight, if you could please keep yourself muted. This is just to cut down on background noise. Again, as I stated, as you come into the meeting, I think you are automatically muted, but if not, please just verify that you are muted. Once we get to the Q&A, there will be, opportunity to speak up and have any questions or to state any comments. But again, as we're getting through the presentation, we would ask that you just please keep yourself muted. Um, Similarly, if you have any questions that come up, we again ask that you please hold those until we get to the Q&A. We are setting aside time at the end for Q&A and discussion. So we would ask that you just let us get through the presentation that we have prepared for you and present the information that we are eager to share with you. And as soon as we can get through that, we will open it up to questions. That said, if you do have a question that comes to mind and you want to go ahead and share it, you can. You're welcome to use the chat feature in Teams. So if a question comes to mind even during the presentation, feel free to go ahead and just drop that in the chat box, Alex, who again is moderating the questions as they come in. He will take note of it and have it at the ready at the top of the queue once we get to the Q&A. And then we will offer a little more instruction or direction as to how the Q&A will work once we get there, but I think that should suffice for now. So let's get into the project background and really talking about how we got to where we are today. I'd like to provide just a brief timeline of some events leading up to where we are now. So starting in late summer 2020, the Hightailers, as well as some other stakeholders, the Memphis Runners Track Club, Wolf River Conservancy, Shelby Farms Park Conservancy, we all started having conversations together about improving safety at this intersection at Walnut Grove and Farm Road, and making it safer for people to bike, walk, jog across Walnut Grove. So much so that we actually collaborated on a grant application to the state that would have been used to fund the design work for improvements and maybe even the construction of improvements. At that same time, we also went ahead and adjusted the timing of the traffic signal at this intersection. We installed what we call a leading pedestrian interval, which is basically a head start for pedestrians. So everyone else has a red light, the walk signal comes on, and you have a 15-second head start to maybe clear the intersection, certainly if you're on a bike, or at least, maybe cross the intersection halfway if you're on foot in that time. So as these conversations were happening about, looking at improvements and again, submitting that grant application, tragically, on November 14th, as I assume most, if not all of you are very aware, there was a fatal crash at this intersection involving two men on bikes who were waiting to cross the streets. Mr. Arnold Castro tragically lost his life as a result of the crash, and Mr. Anthony Jemias suffered a life-debilitating injury as a result. As soon as this happened, we began to discuss some very quick interim improvements that we could do at this location. They were not meant to be the final solution or even permanent, but at least something to put down in a very near term that could make a difference, that could help. And so that's what you may be familiar with if you've been at this location over the last year or so. You have probably seen the concrete barriers, you've seen the different striping configuration that's in place. That was the result of that, these very quick interim improvements. At the same time, though, continued our collaborative efforts with these stakeholders to raise funding for more permanent improvements and to work together on that. And we were successful. We submitted different applications to different organizations, some that we were not successful with, but eventually working together, again, primarily with the Memphis Hightailers and Shelby Farms Park Conservancy, we were able to connect with County Commissioner Whaley, who wanted to assist with the project, and he helped us secure a grant from Shelby County government, a community improvement grant, that was able to fund the design work needed for the improvements at this location. So by May of 2021, with that grant having been received, we were able to procure engineering design services. We've been working with a consultant, Kimley Horn and Associates, a local engineering design firm. So we've been working with them, and we've also been working with all of these stakeholders over the last several months as part of this design process. This is something that I think you'll hear me repeat many times tonight, that it was a very collaborative process. And I'll say that many times because I think it is important to note. So this is a list of all of the stakeholders who were engaged during this design process. So you may see some organizations here, your kind of typical government entities that you may expect to be involved, but you will also note many community organizations, the Hightailers, Runners Track Club, Mid-South Trails Association. So organizations representing the users of these facilities. And I do want to be clear too that, like I said, this was a very collaborative process. It was not as if this was like a one-time meeting with these organizations. Most of these organizations you see listed here attended every meeting that we had. We held regular meetings throughout this design process, and it was an iterative process. We would come up with a first draft, present it to everybody, get feedback, ideas on maybe what could be improved, maybe what wasn't good enough, and try to come up with the next better draft for the second time around, and so on. So that's the quick background of where we are and how we got to where we are today. Let's look at the goals and constraints for the project. First off, and kind of the overarching goal is that we wanted to provide improvements that last as a midterm solution, so for the next 5 to 10 years, until long-term plans for a grade separated crossing are implemented. So by grade separated crossing, what I'm referring to is a bridge, an overpass, or a tunnel across Walnut Grove. That is our plan. That is our long-term plan of what to do at this location. That's been something that's been in the works for a while now as part of the Shelby Farms Parkway project. A little later in the presentation, I'll talk a little bit more about that project. So we know that's coming, but we also know that it's going to be realistically 5 to 10 years until we start construction on that project. We feel that we need something to last until then. We need an intermediate solution at this location and can't wait simply another 5 to 10 years until that bridge or tunnel is built. So the overarching goal was to provide some meaningful safety improvements at this crossing as a midterm solution. More specifically, we want to reduce the crossing distance for pedestrians and cyclists. We wanted to increase physical separation or protection for pedestrians and cyclists from vehicular traffic as much as possible. We heard complaints and we observed this issue of drivers at the northeast corner of the intersection where there is a slip lane, a free moving right turn lane from westbound Walnut Grove to northbound Farm Road, where drivers often don't comply with the crosswalk. By law, drivers, of course, are supposed to stop at that crosswalk and allow pedestrians or cyclists to cross, but that often doesn't happen. So we wanted to try and address that through design and improve compliance by drivers. And now thinking a little bit about constraints, we wanted to do something that could reach construction in a relatively quick timeline. So within 12 months from when we started design. In other words, we didn't want to try and reinvent the wheel here. We wanted to use proven countermeasures that could be designed relatively quickly, that we knew would work, so that we could get something on the ground as soon as possible. And the last major constraint is budget. We were able to secure about $150,000 towards a construction budget on this project. So knowing our goals, this was probably the main constraint to work around. And I think we've done a really great job of accomplishing each of these goals, and you'll see that once we look at the proposals. So existing conditions, again, I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are already very familiar with this location. You probably have experienced it yourself on a bike or walking, jogging. So it's maybe nothing new to you, but can't hurt just to quickly review what these existing conditions are. So here's an aerial view of the intersection of Walnut Grove and Farm. I do want to note that this was prior to the those quick interim improvements that we put down on the ground in late 2020, early 2021. So if this were a current photo, down here at this southeast corner, you would see the new asphalt and the realigned crosswalk, but this image predates that. So in a very general sense, the crosswalk across Walnut Grove today is passing 4 or 5 lanes of traffic, but also just a lot of asphalt. It's crossing a very open and wide expanse of asphalt. It's crossing through a wide expanse of space that is shared with motor vehicles. Because this crosswalk is so skewed rather than more perpendicular to the roadway, that's also adding distance to that crossing. So it's taking more time for people to cross because it is so skewed. Up here in this top right corner, this is that slip lane that I was referring to, where drivers often speed through here. They take the turn, they may disregard pedestrians who are waiting on the sides here. They don't comply with the law that says they have to stop at the crosswalk. So that's an issue. There's this little triangular island. We'll see here in another photo in a second, but it's level with all of the surrounding pavement. It's a very little to no sense of separation from traffic. Forward. So going down to ground level. So again, this is that slip lane at the northeast corner. You can actually see somebody waiting on this island out here at the light, waiting for the signal. There's a lot of signage out here. If a person is standing right here by this gate trying to cross the street, the signage that's here and the other objects that are here might impact a driver's ability to see that pedestrian or that cyclist who's waiting right here. So that's something that we took note of. Here's a view of that island again. So like I was saying, the island is level with all the surrounding asphalt and roadway. If you're standing here, if you're waiting here, it feels exposed. It feels vulnerable. There's no strong sense of separation. Another view, just to kind of reiterate what I'm saying. This is with a vehicle that is taking a turn from a left-hand turn to go north on Farm Road, and again, just picturing how close that traffic is moving towards the island and where people stand. Moving to the other side of Walnut Grove. So this is now on the southeast corner. This photo was taken after the interim improvements that we put in place. So you see the concrete barrier here. You see the pedestrian push button that we moved over to here. So again, you can see how the crosswalk is currently kind of going around the nose of that median and kind of taking an indirect path to get across. Taking a step back and kind of looking to the northwest of that same area, again, you see the barriers that we put in place. The area over here is where previously someone who was waiting would stand and wait. We have moved that, we have shifted that waiting area over to here behind these temporary barriers. Yes, so those are the existing conditions on the ground as today, and I think as I noted, some concerns that we note in the field and some areas for improvement. So now we will get to the planned improvements. I'm going to switch my screen and pull up a PDF of the draft construction documents. So bear with me for 1 minute while I switch screens here. Okay, so we are now looking at the actual draft construction documents for our proposed improvements. I'm going to start again at that northeast corner up here. So let me zoom in to that area. So first, to address the issue of drivers not complying with that crosswalk, flying by, not stopping for pedestrians, there are a number of things that we're doing to address that. So number one, on the lane that's approaching that slip lane, we were proposing to install new rumble strips across the lane. So these will actually be, you can almost think of them like miniature speed bumps. Um, you probably have experienced something like this on a highway, the edge of a highway, those rumble strips, you drive over them, you feel those vibrations. It gets your attention as a driver and encourages you to slow down. Number two, we will also be installing some new crosswalk warning signage that has flashing lights, some LED flashing lights. This is a relatively new type of sign. We only have a few examples of it in the city today, but it's solar powered. It operates 24/7. So you will see that installed, and the idea there is, of course, just something to get at drivers' attention even more so through those flashing lights. As drivers approach the slip lane, a couple changes here. One, the slip lane will be narrowed, be a little narrower than what's there today. That narrower lane will induce people to drive slower as they feel a little more constrained entering that space. They will naturally want to drive a little slower. Additionally, on the edges of the slip lane, we will also be adding rumble strips. Again, similar to what you've probably experienced driving on a highway. So if a driver is not really paying much attention, they're kind of going off to the edge a little bit, they're going to feel those rumble strips. They're going to slow down. They're going to correct and go back to the center of the lane. But what I'm really excited about and what I really think is going to be a vast improvement is a raised pedestrian crossing instead of what's there today, which is just a basic crosswalk. So this raised pedestrian crossing is essentially a very large speed hump or speed table. So it's actually elevated off the ground. There's a ramp up and a ramp down. So this will force drivers to slow down as they're approaching this crosswalk. This will be the first time in Memphis that we are using a raised crossing in this context, in a slip lane. But it is a proven countermeasure that we have seen and that we have learned about in other communities. For example, Boulder, Colorado uses raised crossings like this on a regular basis in slip lanes, and it has been shown to be effective at slowing down drivers and increasing compliance rates at the crosswalk. So I think this is something that's going to make a major difference. As we continue across a little bit, we get to this triangular island. I mentioned earlier how the island is very level with surrounding areas. It doesn't really feel separated from traffic. We will be essentially rebuilding the entire island. There will be new curb and gutter extended or built on all sides of it. So unlike today where it's just grass that meets the edge of the asphalt, there will be a curb and gutter in place. But an even bigger change than just the curb and gutter, let me move to the other sheet here. So same location, I just changed sheets. Again, here's the island. These dots you see, these are representing fixed metal bollards. So metal poles installed on both sides of the path, spaced about 6 feet apart from one another. These are not plastic. These are not something just adhered to the surface of the asphalt. These are true fixed metal bollards. So a true physical protection and barriers on either side of this path. That will, I believe, create a much stronger sense of separation and protection for anyone who is waiting there. The other thing I think it will do is by introducing this, both having these bollards and this curb, by introducing that on the edge of this roadway, for drivers as they're passing here, they will naturally want to slow down a little bit as well, because now they're observing, they're seeing some fixed objects right there at the edge of the roadway. That will encourage them to slow down a little bit as well. So continuing across that crossing, we get to the median. Well, right off, you can probably notice that we have straightened the crosswalk. So previously the crosswalk went kind of more, more at an angle across. It's been straightened out. By straightening like that, we have actually reduced the crossing distance, which allows people to get across a lot quicker. The second thing you may notice is that the crosswalk has now moved behind the nose of the median, or the cap of the median right here. So again, previously, crosswalk was over here. Somebody crossing here probably would have felt exposed to moving traffic or traffic that's just waiting there. Now, crosswalk is behind that. It's offering a stronger sense of separation from traffic. This too would have a curb around it, concrete curb around it. But what's another significant change is the width of the median. We are actually proposing to widen the median by removing surplus asphalt. So on the north side, presently, there is a left turn lane, a westbound left turn lane to go onto Farm Road. We're proposing to eliminate that turn lane entirely and actually restrict left-hand turns at this intersection. The volume for left turns there, based on the traffic data that we have, is extremely low. There is very little need to have that left turn lane here. And we know that if we could eliminate that left turn lane, again, that allows us to repurpose that space, that room, for widening the median and decreasing that crossing distance when people would be sharing space with cars. In other words, sharing space in the roadway on the asphalt. So I'm glad to share that after talking to this about all of the stakeholders around this area, everyone was in agreement that the need for that left turn lane was very low, and that the safety benefits that would result by eliminating it were a better priority. So we are proposing to eliminate that left turn lane entirely. That would move the edge of the median more to the north. Now, in case you're wondering, well, what if somebody still wants to take a left-hand turn? Just about 500 feet to the east of this location is an existing break in the median. So for somebody who is traveling westbound on Walnut Grove, there's an existing break where they could still take that left turn and get down to the access road that parallels Walnut Grove. And if they wanted to access, for whatever reason, even though there are a few destinations down here, if they wanted to go over there, they would still be able to do that. Likewise, somebody who was coming from the north, southbound, they would still be able to cross through the intersection. And of course, somebody coming from the west, traveling eastbound, would be able to take a right. So the access remains to the destinations that are down there. On the south side of that median, there again is surplus space. There's about a 10-foot expanse of asphalt that really is not needed. It's not used. So we can also eliminate that, and we're proposing to widen the median on that side as well. So in the end, we would end up with about 25 to 30 feet area, or 25 to 30 foot wide median here, taking that space back from the asphalt. And then I also want to note that on the north side of that median, let me switch back up to this sheet. So here you can maybe better see the darker gray. That represents the asphalt that is being removed and allowing the median to be widened. On the north side of the median, we are also proposing fixed guardrail. So that would line this whole north side of the median. This would be timber steel-backed guardrail. So it would have a steel structure, but would have a timber or a wooden surface to it. There are a few examples of this in the Memphis area, notably on Wolf River Boulevard in Germantown. Maybe you've seen it there. For one, the obvious benefit of providing that physical barrier, and also just with this being in the heart of Shelby Farms, we did want to have a little consideration at least to aesthetics where possible. So we thought rather than having just typical metal guardrail like you might see along the interstate, that wooden guardrail would look a little nicer and frankly have some other possible maintenance benefits as well. So again, it's a steel structure internally or steel backed, but has that wooden surface to it. Continuing to the south, switching back to this sheet. Again, you have a much shorter crossing distance for those eastbound lanes because we've widened the median. Once you get down here, pretty much what we have in place right now with those interim improvements, that layout would remain the same, but we would be making it more permanent. So removing excess asphalt around here, and then also installing a permanent guardrail along here as well. So I guess I could have stayed on that previous sheet, so I'll go back up there. But you can see that here. So here we are again at that south side, this black line with black dots you see curving around, that is the guardrail that would be put in place there. We also are proposing to install some additional metal bollards on the south side of this asphalt path to prevent drivers from mistakenly entering that area, or perhaps they're trying to go around traffic somehow and intentionally use that. Either way, these metal bollards that are placed here would prevent a driver from entering that area. So that is the overview of the proposed improvements, and it's something that I think when taken all together, there are a number of changes there that would be done, and when taken all together, I think will significantly improve safety, comfort at this crossing for the next several years to come. So I'm going to switch back to the slides. Bear with me 1 minute. Timeline. We're almost at the end here, so thank you for your patience so far. So timeline, we're looking to wrap up the construction documents next month. We'll then move into the bid letting. I would hope that we can start construction by July. I think that's a very realistic goal. And we should wrap up construction by this fall. The construction we're talking about is not that extensive, so if we can start in July, we should be able to wrap it up by the fall and have these improvements on the ground before the end of this year. So before we open it up to just general Q&A, I do want to try and answer some of the frequently asked questions that we have already been hearing from people over the last several months. So I anticipate that some of you may have these exact same questions tonight. So let me just go ahead and try to address some of them now. So number one, why doesn't the city build a bridge or tunnel across Walnut Grove? Well, we are. That is our plan. As part of the Shelby Farms Parkway project, we are going to build a grade separated crossing across Walnut Grove Road. The Shelby Farms Parkway project, though, is a federally funded project. As such, there are a number of requirements and approvals we have to meet in order to get to construction. So it's a very long process, and I'll give an update on that here in a minute. But if for some reason we wanted to try to go ahead and do that bridge or that tunnel separately, in other words, if we wanted to pull out the bridge or tunnel from a part from that existing project and do it, on its own, one, we would need to get approval from the state to do that, to modify this existing project that is federally funded. Two, we would still have to undertake that extensive environmental clearance process that takes time. Three, we would have to identify and secure roughly $3 to $5 million. That's a rough estimate for the cost of a bridge or tunnel. And then four, as I alluded to earlier, that would still take time. That would take years before we could even get to construction. I don't think we can wait more years on a bridge or a tunnel. We should be doing both. We should continue to work towards that bridge and tunnel, work towards that plan and allow the project to move forward. And at the same time, let's go ahead and get some intermediate, meaningful improvements on the ground as quick as possible to be there for the next 5 to 10 years until that bridge or tunnel is built. And that was our goal with this project. Next, why doesn't the city pave the gravel roads parallel to Walnut Grove and detour users under the bridge at the Wolf River? So what this question is getting at, and this is something that I have heard, from several people who have contacted me and asked, why can't we just do this? What it's getting at is, so again, here's an aerial, Walnut Grove running through the middle there. On the south side of Walnut Grove, here's the intersection with Farm. On the south side, there is a gravel road that parallels Walnut Grove, continues all the way down to the west, goes underneath the Walnut Grove Bridge, continues on the north side of Walnut Grove, goes all the way back to Farm Road, and from there, potentially somebody could enter the park that way. Well, there are a couple reasons why I don't think that's the best idea. Number one, that gravel road is actually beyond the city's property, the city's right of way. That's actually the county jurisdiction. So as a simple answer, we, the city, don't even have jurisdiction to pave that, even if we wanted to. But even if we wanted to pursue that concept, that idea, that's about 1.5 miles if you take that all the way around. Now, maybe for some people, adding a 1.5 mile detour to their route is entirely acceptable, no problem. But not everybody can go an extra 1.5 miles. And we know that human nature is to take the most direct path possible. So there are still going to be people who want to take that direct path across the intersection, through the intersection. I would say we need a safe crossing at the intersection to provide that direct connection. And number three, even if we did this, those issues aside, even if we went ahead and did all that and created that path, right here, you have to get people across Farm Road. There is no existing infrastructure in place to provide a safe crossing right there at the bend in Farm Road. So in other words, you are trying to avoid one area of concern by creating a new area of concern. So for all those reasons, in my mind, that's not really a great solution. A good idea, the best idea, is just improve the crossing at the intersection. What is the status of the Shelby Farms Parkway project? It's been going on for a number of years, and I understand many people are eager or interested to know what is going on with it. Again, it is a federally funded project, and for better or worse, federally funded projects come with a lot of bureaucracy. It's great that we can have the funds to rely on and help us build projects, but they come with a lot of hoops for us to jump through. So the good news is that in late 2019, we finally received from the Federal Highway Administration the record of decision on the environmental clearance. That is what we have been waiting on for a while to proceed into the design phase. And just this past January, just last month, we submitted a new application to the state for funding that would allow us to move into that design phase. Typically with these very large federally funded projects, you have to secure the funding phase by phase. So we anticipate that we're going to get that funding and that will allow the project to move forward into the design phase. Lastly, people have also asked me, how can residents support greater investment in pedestrian bicyclist safety projects? They want to see more being done. Couple quick answers there. Number one, I want to be clear, we do not have a dedicated funding source for pedestrian and bicyclist safety projects at the city. There is no line item in our budget specifically for pedestrian bicyclist safety projects. So if this is something that you're passionate about and you want to support, I would encourage you to reach out to your community leaders and tell them that we need additional funding for these kinds of improvements so that we can address safety areas or safety concerns just like this location. And secondly, I would say there are a number of organizations in the city who are working on these issues, organizations that I partner with often in my work, like, for example, the Hightailers. Support those organizations, help those organizations, be members of those organizations like the Hightailers, Commute Options, Memphis, um, Revolutions, Bicycle Co-op, Building Memphis, just to name a few. If you help these organizations do their work, then we will advance overall as a city. So I believe that wraps it up. Thank you for your patience. Before we open up to Q&A, I did want to invite a representative from the Hightailers, Leo O, to just give a few remarks. The Hightailers, like I said, have been a very key partner throughout this whole process. So I wanted to be sure to open the floor to them and let them share a few remarks. So Leo, if you're available, feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate that very much. Yeah, we have been very grateful to be part of this process. I serve as the Director of Advocacy for the Memphis Hightailers Bicycle Club. We also have our president, Mr. Tullio Bertolini's on this call as well. And we were happy to be involved in the grant application and acquisition process, and we're able to provide some funding to help with the design process. We like the proposed changes that have been presented here, and we do believe that this will improve bicyclists and pedestrian safety at the intersection.
Great. Thank you, Leo. Really appreciate that. As I said, I think having especially the Hightailers involved, but all of the organizations and stakeholders involved resulted in a stronger design, a stronger deliverable at the end, and certainly some things that we may not have arrived at without that collaborative support. So I'm just appreciative that you and your colleagues and other organizations were able to volunteer your time to help in the process. Great. So for Q&A, for the remaining time here, couple options. You can either drop your question into the chat and Alex will read it aloud, and we'll do this in the order that questions come in. Or if you would like to actually speak, you can use the raise your hand feature on Teams. If this should be at the top of the menu bar. If for some reason you can't find that button, just drop your name in the chat box, and that'll be another way to let us know that you want to say something. And Alex will call on you in the order that you raise your hand or you announce yourself in the chat box. So, and once it's time for you to speak, feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself and give your comment or ask your question. And to everyone else, again, just please keep yourself muted while you're not speaking, just to cut down on background noise. So Alex, I'll turn to you for questions.
Thanks, Nick. So the first question we have from the comments is from Corey. He says, "Great work and thank you. Would the southeast corner still slope down with a sharp turn for those heading towards the Agri Center?"
Yes, so on that southeast corner there, we would not be adjusting the grade of that curve so much. We believe that the asphalt that's there today will, for the most part, stay. There may be some improvements kind of really at the base of that ramp, especially when where we're installing those bollards. We'll probably have to rework that asphalt up for a little bit. But generally speaking, that curve will, that slope will remain the same.
Okay, the next comment we have here is from Dee Dee. She says, "Drivers making a left turn off Farm Road onto Walnut Grove East, exiting Shelby Farms, do not watch the walk light. What prevents them from looking right and seeing cars stopped and immediately driving without acknowledging the walk light and walkers or riders? This is happening all over Memphis. Drivers assume they have the right turn at any time, regardless of walk lights."
Mm-hmm. So let me go back to a slide. So if I understand correctly, I think the question is saying drivers who are maybe down here trying to take a right-hand turn across this crosswalk. Is that your understanding of the question, Alex? Or
No,
BD,
that's
if you're
not
able
it.
to unmute
No,
yourself? No?
it's
Okay.
coming, they're coming out of Shelby Farms, exiting onto Walnut Grove, going east. So they're coming out of Shelby Farms. They're not from the little gravel parking lot.
Mhm.
That's where the car
So,
hit me. He never looked. He just turned left and just totally kept going.
so coming southbound kind of here and then taking the left and going this way.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Let me pull up the planned improvements. I think that would be helpful to look at while addressing this question. So a couple responses there. So number one, that timing that I mentioned, the signal timing that I mentioned earlier, that will remain in place. So that 15-second head start that's given to pedestrians, that will remain. Part of the benefit of that is that if you're standing on this side down here and you're waiting across, once you get that crosswalk signal, you will probably be able to clear these lanes walking across by the time that drivers have a green light to make that turn. But even that aside, by having this cap in place, this raised median cap or nose right here, that's going to force drivers to also not turn as tight across that median as they might today. They're going to be forced to take a little bit of a wider turn, and as a result, slow down. By moving the crosswalk more kind of set back a little bit like this, it should also improve sight lines of pedestrians who are right here, so that as a driver is making this turn, because they're going a little slower and because they're the taking it a little tighter, they'll have a better view of anybody who is crossing right here. So with all those issues, those benefits combined, it would improve the situation that you're describing. And then in terms of drivers just maybe not complying with crosswalk laws, like you said, and like I've said, it is the law to stop for a pedestrian at a crosswalk. That is an education issue. And I'm pleased to share that actually within a couple months here, we will be launching the city's first safety and education campaign around walking and bicycling. And a significant component of that campaign will be targeting drivers, primarily exactly that, educating drivers on the fact that they do have a legal obligation to stop for pedestrians at the crosswalk. So that will be a message that we want to drive home as much as possible with this campaign that, again, will be starting in a couple months.
All right, moving on to the next comment from Ness. They say, any consideration for reducing the speed on Walnut Grove?
That is something that we had talked about quite a bit in our stakeholder groups and engagement. So the speed limit is set by the traffic engineering at the city, and it is set by looking at the data. There's an analysis that we take that determines what the appropriate speed limit is for any given street. We have reviewed that data multiple times, I think it's fair to say, throughout this design process. And the speed limit that is on Walnut Grove today is the speed limit that would be appropriate based on our data-driven approach. That said, even if we wanted to try and reduce that speed limit, the thing is, design of a roadway, of a street, really influences how fast people are going to want to travel along it, drive along it. And the fact is that the Walnut Grove is basically designed like a highway. It in sections appears to be a rural highway. And because of that, because for a lot of it, there is no curb at the side of the street. It's just a shoulder that goes into the grass. It is divided with a median down it. People feel comfortable to travel at high speeds. So even if we tried to lower the official speed limits, we believe it would not be effective, that people are still going to feel comfortable traveling at a higher speed. The design of that roadway would still allow people and maybe even induce people to travel at higher speeds. So in other words, it really wouldn't be effective. Now, again, all that said, right here at this intersection with these improvements that we're doing, we are altering the design a little bit. So we're, like I said, we're adding curb and gutter around this island. There will be those bollards in place. We're adding some curb and gutter at the nose of this median. There will be guardrail along that north side of the median. There'll be guardrail on the south side down here. So by introducing those elements, it's only a short stretch, so it doesn't really justify changing the speed limit. But by introducing those elements, that will, we believe, induce people to drive a little slower as they're coming through here.
So at this point, that's all the comments we have in the chat, and I don't see anyone with their hand raised. But
okay, well, we still have time. It's I have 6:55 on my clock, and I am happy to hang out and take any more questions or comments. So feel free to raise your hands or drop another question or comment in the chat box.
I'll say one thing. Thank you for your interest. I was hit by a car at this location July 1st. And when I wrote the engineer, I was told, we will not slow down the traffic because it gets people angry. And my response was, will you not do anything until someone is killed? Unfortunately, it was 4 months later when someone was killed. So I do appreciate your interest. I do think we do need a major campaign, because at Shady Grove and Humphreys, I often wait 2 or sometimes 3 lights to be able to cross the street, because traffic, they will not allow me to walk, even when I'm standing there waving at them frantically. So I do appreciate your concern with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. And I would agree with what you said about needing a major campaign. I think Memphis has made great strides in the last 10 years in terms of trying to become more bikeable and walkable. We still have a lot of work to go, though, a lot of way to go. And we're going to need help. It can't just be a city staff only effort. We need help. So like I said earlier, the more you can let your leaders know, your community leaders know, city council, they set the budget for the city, they control the purse. So letting them know that this issue is important enough that more funding is needed. And like I said, working with and helping out organizations like the Hightailers that are doing advocacy work.
Yep.
So I have a question. May I ask a question?
Well, we are trying to go in order, and George does have his hand raised, but
okay.
we'd love to hear your question after that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you guys for the work you're doing. I literally live right on the Green Line, and it's absolutely marvelous, all the work that you've done and all the work you're doing. My only concern is not so much about what you guys are doing, but how can we help educate the rest of the public about all the work you're doing? Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah. Thank you for that question. In fact, I would say you are setting me up. Let me see here. Bear with me. So one thing you can do is to connect people with us. We do have a presence online. You can go to Facebook and Twitter, like you see here at BikePed Memphis. Follow us online. We put updates on there of all the projects that we are currently working on. We provide it's good information, I think, the things that are going on in the city in terms of improving conditions for walking and biking. So, for example, earlier this week, we tested out a new, together with colleagues at Public Works, we tested out a new miniature street sweeper that we are hoping to purchase and use for cleaning bike lanes around the city. And we posted some videos of that test drive on our Facebook and Twitter pages. So might be some fun videos for you to check out. In addition to Facebook and Twitter, we have a website, bikepedmemphis.com. On there, you can find information about all the projects we're currently working on. It's a blog as well, so we may not update the blog as frequently as I would like, but we try to put out some interesting, blog posts as much as we can. So I would say just directing people to these sources of information is probably the best way to connect with us.
Yep, and once we
Thank you.
have our safety and awareness campaign going, we'll have a website with more information there as well. So
that's right. Yeah, thanks, Alex. Great point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy, were you the person that was next with a comment?
Yeah, and I was happy to bow to George. He's a friend of mine. George and I are both a part of the folks that are tricycling around all the time. You should
Great.
see us. We're out there literally every single day. So looking at this thing, my question was this. I know you're proposing that this interim thing be done like within the next year. Where are we at? Like, so you don't really have approval and money to do it? Or, I mean, this is just a proposal? It's not like gonna start happening?
No, this is happening.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So let me go to the timeline.
Oh, good.
So what I was showing you, that the document with the draft plans I was describing, everything that I was showing you on that PDF, that is happening. Those were construction documents that I was showing you, the draft ones. We're in the process of finalizing those right now. They should be finished next month. From there, we will let it to bid, bring a contractor on. We do have the funding secured for this. That we have the $150,000 approximately secured that will fund these improvements.
Fabulous.
I anticipate that we'll be starting construction in July, and we should, fingers crossed, nothing bad weather or something slows us down. We should finish it by the fall.
Fantastic. Yeah, and so it's going to be like a little bit of trail going over the that median. Is that like concrete going over the median part there? It looks like, when you're coming across the street.
It's not going over it in the sense of a bridge. It's going through the median.
Oh, I see. Yeah, like a curb thing. Okay, I gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Very nice. Thank you so much. Again, like George said, we're so appreciative.
Well, thank you, Wendy. Thanks, George. Appreciate the compliments. We like I said, we need your support. So thank you.
So at this point, we have a couple just more comments that have come in. Hopefully the safety campaign addresses this location, all the intersections along the Green Line. Thank you for the effort. Thanks for fighting to make safety changes. We have another comment that street sweeper looked awesome on McLean. And then the last,
I thought so too. I was very thrilled.
And then its last question is, would we be able to get a copy of that PDF? Can you share it if/when appropriate?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would say when appropriate. Like I said, this is a draft document. We should have the final version next month. So once it is a final plan set and has been signed by the city engineer, I think at that point is when it would be appropriate to share it.
Great. So at this point, that's all the comments we have.
Excellent. Okay. Well, again, I just want to thank everybody for taking time from your evening to join us. We had a really great turnout for this meeting. A lot of times for these kinds of meetings, we might get just a handful of people to show up. So it's refreshing to see such interest. And I think it's a location that a lot of us in the community are very familiar with. So maybe we all know it from a personal experience and therefore have more of an interest to see what happens here. So again, I want to thank all of the stakeholders involved that helped us in this collaborative process, particularly Memphis Hightailers and Shelby Farms Park Conservancy. Again, thank you for your help along the way and getting us to where we are. I look forward to doing more kinds of partnerships like this in the future. I think that partnership effort helps and makes some of these projects possible. So I think that wraps it up. Again, appreciate you coming out tonight. You have seen ways to get in touch with us online on social media, so please do. And I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your evening. Oh, and like I said, we will be posting this on YouTube as well, so feel free to check that out. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, let me stop the recording.